welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining in for one of our new additional Birthday Collective sessions. We have a collaboration with the Birthday Workbook together with Hazira, who's on screen now. We are spending some time to talk to Edmund, who is a contributor to the Birthday Book. And the Birthday Workbook has also come up with questions to ask him today as well. So maybe a quick question, Edmund, when I was reading your article and Hazira and I were talking about this nonstop, we were very curious about what were some of the, maybe the costs involved, in your opinion, when one undertakes personal disruption?
So when you talk about costs, okay, I think fundamentally it's financial costs, because you must be prepared that whenever you are going through a disruption or you're trying to pivot industry, I was very clear that when I left the armed forces, I must be prepared to take at least a 30% pay cut. Because like you know, actually, it's the function of how well the industry receives your skill sets that you gain from the armed forces and where they peg you within the market today. And I guess when I talk to my peers, all right, I think a lot of them, they highlight to me, Ed, you got to be prepared that actually you may need to take a 30% pay cut. But to me, that was one consideration, but not the only consideration. Reason being is because, like you're not, money can be earned. Yes, I was very thankful that my wife was very supportive of me to allow me to make this transition. And I think overall it turned out well, okay, financially. I think the other aspect in terms of costs, I think it's in terms of career progression. I mean, there's a cost you may need to consider as well, simply because you must be prepared that wherever you move, you need to start at the bottom again. When I say start at the bottom, in what sense? So when I was entering the bank, when I talked to senior management, I had a chat with one of them, and the guy was, initially when I first came out, I thought about doing things like, digital transformation, digital strategy, and he looked at me, Ed, you're new. All right. And if you ask me, you eventually get to do that. But I want you to think in terms of back to basics. Or at least how I interpreted back to basics and go back to roots. So when I try to turn me back to my experience in armed forces, it's like going back to become a platoon commander. Literally like going down to the ground again, really getting your hands dirty and really doing the basic things. And it's true, I think I've been doing it for the last 1.5 years. It's been great. And I think what's important is as I'm doing these basic things again and interacting with staff, because I mean, the role I'm in allows me to interact with developers, business analysts, business stakeholders, all right, test automation engineers, quality assurance testers. So I mean, within my role, I interact with a multitude of people and cut across different domains. When I say cut across different domains, when I first started in the bank, I was working on a marketplace project. Now I'm working on investment projects, wealth investment projects. Totally two different fields altogether. And what was important is I think what's important when you start anywhere, all right, is managing the interactions with people. And I guess when I came to the bank, it was just one thing. I just want to learn the basics, meet as many people as possible, and then maybe try to shape my perspective on where I should go to next or where I need to move next. Because like, actually, it all sounds very sexy and nice, right? Or artificial intelligence, fourth industrial revolution. What does it mean to you as an individual? That really is important. And actually, when I left, I was clear I didn't want to stay on the armed forces, but was I exactly clear in what aspect of this fourth industrial revolution that I want to get myself involved in? I wasn't entirely sure, simply because you don't know industry enough, or you haven't set yourself in industry enough to know exactly where to move yourself within that direction. So like even when I talk to people today, like I recently met someone from senior management a couple of months back, and she was like asking me, how you coping? Oh, I've been here about a year. Yeah, give yourself 2 years. Because like actually, you haven't really fully understood everything you need to understand yet. So I guess another cost, I guess, for me, because of progression, is I think time. You need to I think another cost is you must be able to spend time and must be prepared to give time. So the cost is in terms of 1 minute. Quiet. My kids are screaming in the background.
No, it's fine. It's perfectly okay.
It's completely understandable.
No. Yeah, it's okay. But I mean, because we work home-based learning, we do a lot of calls. So once in a while, you need to remind our kids, guys, we're on a call. Please understand. Yeah. So I was saying, so the cost, I think, at least for my first 2 years in the bank, 3 years in the bank, the cost actually, I would say, cost into family time, because like I must be prepared to work hard. I must be prepared to sacrifice time to get the work done and to learn as much as I can. So even though, like, for example, I may work maybe 12, 13-hour days, I'll still come back. I will go onto I will log my laptop again, and I will go maybe do a course. Internal courses in the bank. There's plenty of courses that DBS offers internally to staff. So for example, recently DBS wanted the staff to look at this Amazon Deep Racer League. So basically is learning how to program a car to go on a track and basically try to get the car to move at the fastest time. And basically they teach us how to use reinforcement learning to try to get the car to move faster. That was a 4-hour session. It's conducted internally in the bank. And actually, they got multiple sessions over the course of like 2-3 months so that staff can register, go and learn, and then try and play around with the car yourself using the Amazon Web Service, AWS. Yeah, so me, that was, is this kind of courses that, the bank offers. And also like, so for example, they recently created a data course. So I spent 2 hours looking at not a webinar, but an online lecture about design for data. How do we ensure that we embed data into multiple aspects of our customer journeys? So that at least, because actually, you can't improve a product unless you have data on the product. You know what customers are thinking, which button do they press, what do they want to see in the journey. And I guess these are some of the things that I've thought about. And I know I got a bit of tangent, but okay, so disruption for cost, financial. No,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, all right. I guess let's answer the question. Don't get too off tangent, but yes. Yeah, so I think one is, okay, so financial.
Yeah.
2, I think in terms of progression, all right, you need to consider that. 3, in terms of family time, because in the initial years, you got to be prepared that you got to work hard.
Yeah.
Right? I think also maybe a 4th course I'll think about it is, I call it a bit of rewiring. Because I think when you spend a lot of time in an organization, like when I spent a lot of time in the SCF, I was wired to think in a certain way. All right, I approach a problem in a certain manner. For me, then it became important to take the good parts and not take what I deem as I think maybe the bad part. So for example, like in the SCF, maybe there's a tendency to maybe in the units, if you want to put your message across, you become very dominating. Maybe, but dominating, or you shout, or you aggressive, maybe. All right. That's hypothetically.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to drive this stereotype among my peers. So when people look at me, I don't want them to see me as Edmund, the SCF officer, but I didn't want to see me as a peer, a colleague that is also wanting to do his best and like willing to learn. So I guess in this way, I'll take it as a cost as well, because you do need to spend the time and effort to try to rewire yourself. Right. So rewire the way you think, rewire the way you approach things, and also maybe like your networks will change again. Yeah. Because I think when I entered the bank, in the digital side, actually we have a lot of people that are not Singaporean. That's one. 2, at the same time, I think there's a high proportion. If I'm not wrong, there's a high proportion of females in my department. They don't do national service. All right, they may not understand. All right, so I guess. So I thought that is something to consider as well. Like you do have to consider your surroundings, and you do need to spend time deliberately thinking about how to approach situations. Yeah. So these are some of the costs that I've faced, and the cost of disruption. And this retrospectively, when I look in the last 1.5 years, what it's been.
Thanks so much for that, Edmund. I thought that was a very, very comprehensive start to our conversation. I was wondering, Hazira, you had some specific questions to ask Edmund. I also have a lot of questions to ask Edmund, so I'll pass the time over to you first before I jump in again later. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to pick up on something you said about the skill set that you gain from the armed forces, because I think you mentioned it both like with reference to the pay cut and with reference to the, there's a certain need to rewire because you're conditioned to do things a certain way because of your experience in SAF. At the same time, like there are certain skills that you've gained from that. So I guess what are the skills that you gained from the SAF that have helped you in this current job?
Okay, so I guess when I was leaving the armed forces, I went and chat with people who had left and to get them to share their perspective with me. So one thing that stood out for me is I think the SAF gives you, I would say, mastery or extensive experience in 2 areas. One is people leadership, all right, and one is process leadership. Why people? Okay, people leadership is natural, right? We manage a large groups of people. All right, it's a lot about motivation, small unit teams, and how we get into move to center objective. Process leadership, we think in a very systematic and structured manner. Logical sequence. So for example, I mean, I don't know if Chris remember this, we have battle procedure. So we think in systematically, step A, step B, step C, we consider dependencies between two different plans, limitations, assumptions.
Right.
Okay, very systematic, very structured. What I think draws us back or doesn't help us is content leadership. We don't have content, all right? You don't know what is being expected from you and what is asked of you, all right? So for example, when I first entered the bank, my biggest fear, all right, was even though I'm strong in process, I don't know what people expect in terms of process. You don't know if you don't know what the process is, you'll never be able to value add, right? Okay, so I think as in the content as well, I mean, I didn't have domain knowledge. When I say domain knowledge, I plan my own finances, yes, but it's different when you want to work in a bank, all right? Because you are supposed to be the domain expert in terms of finances. But in this case, I think, so content leadership, all right? So I think what has been valuable is because I think another aspect as well is the emphasis on values-based leadership and principles. All right. So I think some of the values which I bring across from the SCA back to my work in the organization today is a few lah. All right. One is discipline. All right. Discipline, not only just personal discipline, but discipline as adherence to time, adherence to tasks and deadlines. Yeah. All right. Leadership, where leadership is about influence and making sure that it's about people first, right? So you try to invest a lot of time in relationships. And you invest a lot of time coaching people as well. All right. Then I think the last aspect is I'll call it care for soldier, care for your colleagues, all right? Yeah. So that what I thought were things that I brought to the organization, all right, and helped me out. The emphasis on values, principles, people leadership, and process leadership. Because I think the feedback I got from some of my peers is that I look things in a very structured manner. I help to think in terms of systems and how to see how we can systematize things and improve processes within our teams or within the bank. So for example, I think it's only been a year, but I guess because of what I was able to do last year, one of the team leads was like, hey, Ed, can you maybe work with our tech folks to see how we can improve the agile maturity of our squads? So to see how agile they are and basically work with the coaches to see what we can do and systematize things. So I've been doing that for the last 2 or 3 months. I've only been in the bank for about a year and a half. But I think the good thing that when I first entered the bank was in the course of 4 months, 5 months, I did 3 courses. I took up a course on fintech. So it was a fintech foundation course. It was a certified fintech foundation course run by the Singapore Fintech Association. So at least it gave me a sense of what is industry looking at today and what are the different applications of fintech in multiple fields. That was one consideration. Second, the bank sent me on 2 courses. One was a certified product owner course and one was a certified Scrum Master course. So these are the 2 key roles that occur within a squad or a development squad that you need to know that will help you in understanding agile processes. So this was my way of getting content, all right, and try to pick things up. And along the way as well, the things I read has changed, all right. Things I read has changed. What I look in the newspaper has changed, and that was part of the rewiring lah. That actually the things you do on a daily basis, the people you talk to, the webinars you sign up for, all right. Yeah, I mean that's all. That's where it is lah, right? You rewire through the things you read, people you meet, right? And I guess even the courses you go for.
Yeah.
And I guess interestingly within the bank, all right, at least what I've done is that in the last year, I try to pick up maybe 2 areas that I want to focus on. So one is digital banking. That means making sure that we take up digital adoption, agile delivery. All right. In this case, I'll lump all this domain of digital. But at the same time as well, as I've been in the bank, DBS's one of the DBS internal taglines that we have is best bank for a better world. All right. So it resonated with me because you think about financial institutions, you think about purpose. What purpose do they have? So it was through that journey as I was discovering that for myself that I've also taken another keen interest in sustainable finance and thinking about the bank's role or financial institutions' role in, I guess, towards sustainable development goals. Yeah. So for me, these are the twin things I look at now. One is digital banking, and the other one is sustainable finance and sustainable development goals, lumped together. Am I doing the second part within the bank? No, I'm not. So there's more of like a personal interest in trying to understand things a bit more. So I mean, just the matter of me, I did a masterclass on impact measurement, impact measurement. How do you measure impact within the projects that organizations are doing? And not academic nature. I took it from a group called the Impact Institute Exchange. So they're all practitioners. And basically, I wanted a more practitioner outlook. I mean, academic, you can get things online. You can probably Google anything nowadays, right? But it's more of getting hearing from experienced professionals themselves. That's something I won't be able to get. When you talk about upskilling, there is plenty of room to go, but you also got to, I think people got to figure out for themselves what they're good at, so that at least, how do you manage transition? Because like cannot, as you go through different stages in life, you need to go through different stages of transition. And it's very interesting because this morning, I was on a call with my mentee from TJ. So I'm a TJ alum, and I mentor 3 of them. Okay, and I introduced her to Vera. I think you know Vera, right? Vera Pan.
Oh yes. Yeah.
So Vera's my junior in TJ as well, and we were just chatting. We were just chatting about how actually, how do you manage transition, and also how we need to. She was the girl was interested in sustainability work. All right. So our point to her was, okay, first one, don't use the 4 years you have in university to determine the next 40 years of your working life. That's one. Reason being is because you're going to go through multiple periods of change and disruption. All right. Gone are the days where actually you stay in one job, you stay in one industry for a sustained period of time. Not necessarily the case in today's world, right? I mean, the way we are moving, the way technology is moving, and the way we're being disrupted at multiple levels. I mean, even COVID is a disruption for us today. And will this be the last pandemic? Probably not, actually. Unfortunately, yeah. All right. So, I think in that context, actually, I thought it was actually quite funny. I mean, during this morning session, where I was talking to my mentee and Vera, I happened to pick up I was looking through your questions as well, concurrently, like trying to get some multitask, right? So and then I think it kind of makes sense. Like, I mean, some of the discussion points we're having this morning, and it quite tied in quite nicely. So I'm pretty glad I did that this morning.
Hearing you share all of this, Edmund, I cannot help but feel very inspired by the fact that clearly there's a very strong core of personal beliefs and values that you have that transcends the industry that you're working on. And I think that's very admirable and something perhaps our viewers and our listeners would also benefit quite a fair bit from. I have a random question though. Looking at the article that you wrote for the birthday book, I noticed, at least Hazira and I, we were talking about this, we noticed that you wrote it as a letter to your children, right? And I'm just very curious why you went about such a form, why did you choose to write it in such a way? Yeah.
I guess when I was thinking about the birthday book, I wanted, so I think one thing that I've always done with my kids every National Day is we listen to National Day songs.
Okay.
And I think for the most time, my kids have grown up seeing me in green. So they've seen me in green, and they've always seen me, Daddy needs to leave the house early. I never see Daddy in the morning because Daddy's ready at office. Or Daddy comes late at night, or Daddy doesn't come home because he's outfield, or he's in the field training. I think so. That's like my kids' memories of me. I think at least my son's memory for the first 6 years. Daddy's in the army, right? Because he's seen me on parade. He's seen me basically standing vigil guard, all right, for LKY's passing. He's seen me. He's seen me with camouflage cream on my face. I mean, I had to do a 8-week stay-in course in the lead up to my second turning 1.
Wow.
So I was on stay out I was staying in camp for 8 weeks. All right. I only book on the weekends. And so that's my kids' memory of me.
Wow.
So why is a letter to my kids? I think it was important. I think for me it was important to tell them my reasoning and logic. I don't know why. I guess it's one of those things where I thought about it like, hey, my wife knows everything I'm thinking about, but my kids probably don't understand. Probably won't understand now, but at least I'll write it to them now. And I guess in the future, when we pick it up again, they at least can understand. They will read it and they understand. I think more importantly, I thought it was important that at least to our children as well as even the youth I mentor today, is that I think it's important to be open about disruption, and not to be set in our ways and to be too comfortable. Right? So when I say not to be too comfortable is I've always been someone that's challenged the status quo. And I guess in a way, when I was in the armed forces, I challenged the status quo, but I think in this case, I was going through personal disruption. I was challenging myself. Yeah, because truth be told, I wasn't happy with the armed forces. I was very happy. I was doing well. All right. Plenty of buddies. And yeah, the key thing was I was very comfortable. I went to work knowing what needed to be done, how it could be done in the fastest way. I could take on a lot of extra things. And truth be told, I mean, in the armed forces, at one point in time, I was a staff officer in the plans department. I was an honorary aide-de-camp to the president. I was a national education facilitator. I sat on a committee with to improve employer relations with MINDEF. I was in Temasek Society, organizing talks. I also did volunteer work outside. So I mean, you're comfortable. You can you keep pushing. But the point I think it came to a point for me is that I think the flip side of working in the plans department in MINDEF is that you read a lot. You constantly think and read a lot. And I was reading a lot of technology magazines. So this is like in 21-4 period, right? So 21-4, I was in MINDEF, like you forced to read because you're forced to think you need to think of ideas to improve the army. How can I make the army more efficient? How can I make the army more productive? And naturally use tech, right? That is one of our means enablers to allow our armed forces to be punch above its weight. Technology. So as you look into technology, I also interacted with a lot of Defense Science Technology Agency, DISTA, or competition with scientists and like the engineers there, and you start thinking a lot about tech. But you, as a history major, you start to read about trends. You start to look across the horizon. What does tech look like, and where are we going today? And that's where it started going. I got introduced to the term fourth industrial revolution, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all right, data, all right, digital disruptions. Yeah, so I think it was a function of myself being not wanting to be too comfortable, all right, getting a bit itchy, all right, understanding the trends that are happening. Then, as you, I guess, to truth be told, it took me a while to decide whether to lead the armed forces because I mean, ironically, right, you're happy, being there, all right, and actually, it took me about at least 3 to 4 months of intense discussions with people, and I say people, I mean people of all walks of life, all friends are. And it was through the discussions with them that I think I gained clarity on what I wanted, and I guess the clarity I had then was I wasn't willing to wait, all right, up to a certain point to leave the armed forces, because I think eventually we all have to leave our roles, or at least in the army we all have to leave our roles eventually. Mandatory retirement age was for officers then was, it still is 50, but you can choose to leave anytime before that. And I guess for me, the biggest question was, do I stay and go for command college, which is our pinnacle course for officers, potentially take up command in an active battalion, which is something I've been preparing for my entire SAF career. Every SAF officer, at least we aspire to command, all right? Or do I say, I think this is enough, all right, and I think I want to place my bets elsewhere, right? So that took a while because for me that was the hardest decision because not just for me personally, but also because at that point in time I was coaching 3 groups of officers. How do I tell my coachees that this is the decision I made? Because for the longest time for me, the longest time I was always telling them about the organization and how we can why we must do better for the organization, do our best, all right? But at least I think I was clear then because I was not leaving because I was disgruntled. I was leaving because I wanted to pursue another opportunity. And for me, that was more important. Yeah, and I was willing to make that jump. But on the flip side, when I think about it, it was a bet for me because I was doing it. Honestly, I think we're just very lucky to be able to do it in Singapore because I'm not so certain I'll be able to do it elsewhere, all right? Especially with the skill sets I have, all right? And I think that was important for me to write it in that way to my kids as well. Because I wanted to remind them, even though I've left the armed forces, I'm still betting on this country called Singapore. Through my transition out of the armed forces into a local company, all right, and into what I'm doing now at this point in time, all right. even that, with that being said, they know I still have to go back for reservist. So I mean, yeah, I guess in a way, I haven't lost that much. I find, because I still can go. I still go back for NS, right? And I think you don't do. I feel you don't lose positive aspects of the armed forces, the brotherhood, the sense of purpose. All right, even if you enter the private sector. But in this case, like yeah.
So, yeah, Hazira, go ahead.
No, I don't have a question. You can ask the.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I couldn't help but chuckle because so Edmund, I think you answered one of the questions, one of the deep-seated questions that Hazira and I was having. So let me frame it for you, right? So like we were wondering how in the world would a person with a history degree who had a very good career in the SCF, like how did he even get like interested in AI and like tech? But I think like when you mentioned about your time in the policy department, reading
Plans
those
department.
things, I think
Plans
our plans
department,
department, that helped us to make the link together. And I think when you what I got the most in that last sharing that you did was that kind of interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary kind of approach that you were taking, right? You were seeing the domain knowledge of AI and tech, and you use the historical concepts of like causality, trends, and modality, and seeing patterns. I think that is one of the, I mean, Hazira is going to be an educator, right? So that's one of the main things that we are looking about, we're talking about in terms of education, to see the multiple porous boundaries and the cross-pollination of ideas in that way.
So I mean, like, actually, I think it's important actually within any domain that you study, or there's a reason why you call it a major, because you decide to go deep in the area.
Yes.
But you also need to have breadth. You need to have breadth, right? And your breadth is how much you want your breadth to be, lah.
Yeah.
So I mean, even funny we were talking about it this morning, because me and Vera were just commenting when we were talking to our mentee, like actually whatever we learned at university, content-wise has no application to what we're doing today. Content-wise. But it was more the skills we learned, all right, that were more important. And also, it's not so much what you do in university that's important in the classroom, but it's even more important to get outside the classroom and do things. Whether it be networking with people, getting involved in non-profits, getting involved in charities, doing community service, doing an internship in a startup, going overseas. Yeah, this is more important. Not say more important, but I think depending who you talk to, some people say that is more important. But I mean, but the point being is that actually, funny you say that, because I mean, talking to another mentee who's in SMU now, he's doing investment banking. He's like, he wants to be an investment banker. I say, okay, that's perfectly fine. All right, but okay, if you're interested in fintech, the thing you got to consider yourself, all right, is do you want to go in deep now? And my challenge back to him was go to an ASEAN country. Stay within the region, all right? I think my point to him is that actually in terms of potential, in terms of maybe the next 15 years, all right, I think we'll be looking for more people, I think, at least Singaporeans, I think we'll hope for more Singaporeans to be able to have a better appreciation of ASEAN and even to work within ASEAN. Yeah, so I mean, I was just sharing him, I said, consider going to Myanmar, consider going to Vietnam, consider going to Indonesia. Because these are places, all right, like or not, just by sheer population size, all right, sheer resources that they have, okay, and where they are today, you're going to see growth. And when you're going to see growth, you want to be able to tap on this growth. And as a Singaporean, all right, I mean, Singaporeans go overseas all the time, but where did they go to? And where you go to the US, you go to UK, you go to Europe. Yeah, so I mean, it's important to go to these places, yes, but why do you go to these places for? Yeah. Having that clarity is important now. So I guess I was trying to just challenge him to say that, have you considered going to ASEAN? Have you considered working within ASEAN because of the growth potential that the region offers you? And also, where is Singapore's place in ASEAN today? Yeah. So that was important. Yeah, so I mean, I cannot, yeah, I was just thinking about it this morning as well. Like I did history, and I did history only because I like to read. I like to read, and I enjoy. To me, history is like it's a story, right? It's essentially a story, and or it's someone's perspective of an event or someone's perspective of a story, right? So I mean, for me, I just like writing stories, reading stories, and I think what I found was more important is that I guess I spent a lot more time writing, and making sure honing your skills in writing, hone your skills in communicating. All right. So, yeah. Major is a means to an end. All right. It's just a means for you to learn certain skill sets and to maybe go deep in an area. All right. But it shouldn't be the end all, right? It's 4 years. It shouldn't determine the next 40 for that matter, and it shouldn't determine what you're going to do next.
Yeah.
It may just, I mean, you ask me, I think history was important to me when I entered the SCF because of how I viewed events. And I guess how I viewed campaigns. I mean, it was very easy for me to talk about campaigns and talk about historical events to people around me because I had the background knowledge. I know what to read and I know how to frame it. Yeah.
So on that note also, just curious, Evan, we may have some readers or listeners or viewers who may have parents or who themselves might be undergoing some form of personal disruption given COVID, and things like that. Just wondering from your experience, what do you think would be perhaps the 2 to 3 most key attributes or some words of encouragement you guess from your perspective you think you might want to share with these individuals who are maybe trusted into the personal disruption rather than choosing
to go into personal disruption.
Yeah.
I think the first thing I'll say actually is, I think it's a bit airy-fairy, sorry, but I think it's just, hope. I think don't lose hope. I think don't lose hope, and I think on that note is to have a bit of faith, right? I think we are very lucky in Singapore because there are avenues to go and seek help, right? And on the note as well is, I think hope is one, all right. But the other thing, I think, give things time, or things take time for that matter. You got to be prepared. You're going to go through disruption. Things are not going to be back to normal. Maybe the next month, 2 months. It could be 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. But the point is that if you decided on a course, and the point is to stick at it, to stick at it and to keep thinking along that track, so you don't meander off course, but instead you're moving in a general direction, and you stick on the general direction. Yeah, so it's like you have a compass, right? You have a compass, you know broadly where you're going, but you may not know exactly where you're going to go. Yeah, and so the first one is hope, all right? Maintain hope, maintain faith, all right? Because there are support systems where we are today in Singapore. Second, actually, is let things take time, all right? And in fact, don't rush, all right? And I think the third thing is, I think when you look at life from a whole life perspective, all right? Consider things in terms of family, where you are in terms of family, all right? And I think, I think when I left the organization, I think what was disruptive for me was, I think one, yes, it's family, right? But two, also, it's not just your immediate family, but your extended family. Because I mean, most Singaporeans, if you fulfill multiple responsibilities, right? You're working, all right. Second, you're a father. You are probably a son, okay, a son to somebody.
Yeah.
You are also probably an NS man, all right. You have those commitments as well. So if you have multiple responsibilities to play, and you need to factor all those in, sometimes some things need to drop. So even though I left the SCF, I told Mindef, I said I cannot come back for reservist, which is good actually, because they said they call it year 0, so they give you 1 year off. So you do it for 1 year. For 1 year, you don't. 1 year for my first year, I didn't do reservist.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, even then also like when they want to send me for courses, I said don't call me back for courses. Don't call me back. All right. Because I can't. All right. I need to focus. I need to go deep, and I need to focus on what I'm doing, right? But I think the last year was personal disruption one, but I think also a lot of change took place. So if and I guess you need to factor all these changes in. For me, it was a learning lesson because even though I was changing my job, that's one. I needed to prepare for my son entering primary 1 this year.
Oh wow!
Right.
Yeah.
I just moved house last December.
Oh wow!
And the reason
Okay.
the reason why I moved house is because my wife and I were welcoming our 3rd kid. So
oh wow! Congratulations! Oh my goodness!
So the birthday book. I mean, the article was dedicated to my 2 older kids, Nathaniel and Emily.
Yeah.
Last October, we welcomed our number 3, Charlotte. So Charlotte's on the book, but yeah, I mean, she'll probably read the article when she grows up, knowing this was written after. Yeah, written before she was born. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, personal disruption, you also need to, I think, factor in all these other things that are taking place in your life as well, because these are some things that are out of control, but because you fulfill different responsibilities and you have different roles as an individual, you need to prepare for those as well. Right. So for example, taking a lesson from a friend, all right, who left the force.
Mm.
He considered liabilities, and he considered that for the next couple of years he wasn't going to buy a car simply because he need to factor for this kind of, you need to build a financial base again and get ready for that.
Yeah.
So, like I think the sad fact, the reality is that personal disruption only doesn't affect you; it affects other people as well. And if it affects other people as well, you need to take those considerations into account because by virtue of where we are today or where you are in life, you will be playing different roles. And you just need to maintain that. Yeah. So I guess even when I was moving, I think I was very fortunate that my wife was very supportive one, but also when I needed to work late in the office, she's a bit more understanding. And you also need to make things work for yourself. And am I still on this disruption journey? Yes, I am. All right. I'll be lying if I said I wasn't, but I guess it's now become, I think I've crossed the first hurdle, which was going into a place where I want to work. Right. And I guess learning the skill sets which I find, which is the reason why I left in the first place. Because I mean, when I was choosing to leave the armed forces, were there options? Yes, there were options. There was DBS. I considered Facebook, Grab, ST Engineering. But at the end of the day, why I chose DBS was DBS offered me the best opportunity to work with developers and to get involved in the tech, as opposed to looking at things from a conceptual level. Because why in ST wanted me to look at future technologies, right? Which is wrong, which is exciting as well because it builds on my strengths. But I found that at least from a job match perspective, and also where I was and where I wanted to be next, it didn't offer me the greatest leverage.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess in a way I consider myself very lucky because I had the opportunity. More often than not, if you're going through disruption, you may not have the access to opportunity as well, which is a reality, right? If you think about it, because of job skill match. I mean, today we may want to hire a lot of people in the digital area, but I mean, if you don't have the skill sets to get inside, then it's hard, right? I mean, like that's just the reality that we have today. So it's one of those things where people have to be prepared to take time to go and learn new things, and I guess be prepared to spend the effort to go and upskill themselves. So interestingly, about a month ago, I did an interview with a fellow. Okay, I'm still doing USP interviews, right, for students.
Okay.
All right. So
Man.
USP called me back, so I said, okay, I'll do the interviews. So they paired me with another alumni who took a 9-month break and went for a data course. He was prepared to take a 9-month break to do a data course so that he could be hired by a company to do data analytics.
Oh.
Yeah, he was doing very well, and he was in shipping, doing very well, but he decided he wanted to do data, and he took a 9-month break.
Wow.
But you see, that's the thing. Not married, no kids, and I guess he's responsible for himself. So I guess in a way he knew that if he wanted to do this, he had to do it now, simply because of where he was in life. Yeah, and even when some regulars do talk to me about considering leaving the force, my first question to them is where you are today, and be very clear why you're leaving.
Yeah.
Because I think actually, if you leave an organization because you're unhappy with the organization, then I'm sorry I think you can change your boss. If you can always ask for a new posting, because I don't think, and a lot of times I think people leave because of their boss, not because of the organization, because the organization is good generally.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, I guess what else can I think of? Yeah.
I think I think it's just really, really interesting what you shared, because something that I picked on personally is that you were very methodical in the process of like, is this disruption good for me and for the people around me? And I think like that process is something that maybe I think most young people. So okay, I consider myself a young person, but because
you are young, right?
I'm starting out, right? Starting out.
You are young.
I think it's something that we don't necessarily think about, mostly because I think we have less liabilities at this age. Because at this point, like, my responsibilities are mostly to my family and then maybe to my friends, because I don't have kids that I'm responsible for.
True, but Hazira, yes. You can experiment because you are young. You can experiment.
Yes.
You can experiment, but I think as you go higher, as you grow older, the room to experiment, the room to, I guess, take risks, I say will change as well, because you generally become more risk averse as you grow older. And I think that's one consideration as well, right? Between making a decision to maybe leave, okay, so I'm 36 this year. I left when I was 30, the year I turned 35. Leaving at age 35 or considering to go to command college to potentially take up a CEO position or maybe take on another branch head appointment, I'll be anywhere between 38 and 40. And for me, it was not that I thought that if I wanted to go, I also need to consider where I was in my career. And for me, a fear was that I become even more comfortable where I was, because actually once you become too comfortable, it's really very hard to leave. Because I mean, even some of my peers today, when they talk about leaving, all right, or they want to go through disruption or they want to change, there is a cost. There is a cost involved, and if you're not prepared to take that cost because you got to factor all those around you as well, then don't. Yeah, because actually the organization they offer me. I mean, even I was just leaving, someone offered me, hey, if you want to do tech, why don't you join the cyber organization, defense cyber organization? A certain skill sets we need from you, all right? Because in my last appointment in MINDEF, I was doing research, very deep research in certain domains, all right? And so when you come over, we want your skill sets here. You can spend 2 years here. We send you for courses. Why not? Yeah. And when I thought about it, it's not that I don't want. It's a good opportunity. Someone paying for my upskilling and whatnot. I think I reached a point where I think work experience is more important, and you really get your hands dirty in getting the field that you want to be in and doing it, as opposed to learning more head knowledge again. I probably will too, but I guess it will, put me in a certain track, which I wasn't prepared to do at that point in time. So to me, I think when you look at it from that perspective, I thought I made the right choice. Retrospectively, you never know at that point in time, okay? I thought I made the right choice because actually within the private sector, I guess I'm considered young because there's runway. Yeah. And you think about it today, I mean, we are going to be working to 60. Maybe 70 by the time you get there, Hazira. Okay. Sorry, but yeah. Okay. Yeah, but so you think about it, if you do the maths, right? I left, I was 35.
Yeah.
There's at least 25, 35 years, for another work you need to consider. And will I be going through another disruption in the future? Probably yes. I'm pretty certain that in the next 10, 15 years, I may have to go through another disruption again. Yeah.
So I'm just curious on that note, Edmund, sorry to interrupt, but I'm just very curious also, has there been moments in this year at DBS where you wake up some days and you feel like, man, maybe I shouldn't have done this move, and then you go through this narrative. I'm wondering how do you get out of it, and how do you help others also who may be in this similar situation? Yeah.
No, so I think I think first, I think when I left, I made a very conscious decision because I told my senior commanders, I said, once I made this decision, there's no turning back. You cannot turn back, because I think once you turn back, I find that you go into a vicious cycle of what if?
Yeah.
Why did I do this? I'm so comfortable. I'm very tired. And I guess I tell myself just to suck it up and just move on. And actually, was I prepared for long hours? Yes, I was. I'm prepared that actually you need to deliver. Because actually, when I first came in, I think I had some colleagues, a lead came and talk to me. Then it's like, hey, you do sure you know what we're getting yourself into? No, because actually, where I am in the digital delivery team, is tough. You are the one person that pulls business and tech together. All right, and actually, you're under intense scrutiny and on timelines. So I'll never forget. So this colleague, very nice guy, but I think he was very concerned that actually he wanted me to be considered are you sure you did the right move? I mean, you left the armed forces as a major, you're going to get a half colonel, all right, at least. Very stable career, right? Why do you leave? I went through this conversation with him. Then, are you sure you can do this? He just challenged me. Are you sure you can do this? But truth be told, right, I mean, that's a very valid concern. Who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you? So I think good thing is that at least I think I convinced him, because eventually he asked me to stay on the project for a while longer. All right. Yeah, I guess, and it's those skill sets and those values which I learned from armed forces which help me as well, because you are different. You look at things differently. Yeah, so I'm a stickler for punctuality. I don't like to be late. And I think in one of the ceremonies we have in software development is a stand-up. So a stand-up essentially is like a daily call you have with all the developers, the whole team, where we come together for 15 minutes to say, what did I do yesterday? What am I going to do today? And am I facing any blockers so that we can try to sort it out internally within the team. So, all right, we used to have my project used to have a stand-up every day at 9:30. All right. Then eventually they say, oh, actually people come in, they want to start a bit later. So it became 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock, people were still late. So I'm like, hey guys, hey, y'all cannot make it, y'all cannot like meet a timing, is it? Or y'all cannot, if you say a time, just show up. And usually I'm the one, usually the one does, I'm in office I'll be in office like an hour before. I'll be in office at 8:30 and I'll just do my work first. At 9:30, you just stand out, you wait lah. Then you start the discussion. Yeah, so I mean, even when the developers used to come in, like maybe if you start at 9:30 and they come in like 9:31, 9:32, I just smile at them, hey, you late again, huh? Yeah.
Channeling the can sense the SAF channeling coming.
Yeah, no. I mean, but my point is that I think there's some aspects which are positive, which I think my point to team was I said, come on, like you come late means you waste everybody's time. All right, we can start on time, end on time. Yeah. So I mean, so these are some of the positive things I found, and at least, I think for most part, I think I'm surviving. I'm transiting well, and I think it helped that at least, I think the courses I did in the first 6 months helped. Reason being is because the kind of conversation you start to drive and the things you say is different. Yeah. Right. Yeah, and I guess in a way, once I think you consistently deliver, people then start to trust you. Yeah. So interestingly, so I recently moderated a banking discussion run by this team called, I think you heard of Advisory, correct?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so the team run by Ichin and the team there, they talk about mentorship. So I mean, I moderated one of the dialogue sessions on banking.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So with 3 other bankers, all right, 2 very experienced bankers, because 2 of them have been bankers their whole life, and another recently converted banker. She was a former police officer.
Oh.
So actually, when we were discussing, actually, a lot of questions came out. Do you need a finance background to be in banking today? Do you need to do this? You need to do that? It's important to do a CFA master. So, friend of mine, Brian, Credit Suisse banker, I love the guy because I mean his answers was straight to the point, and his point to them was, hey guys, everything today is Googleable. Right? You can Google everything. It's only a matter whether you bother to read and whether you bother to read widely. Because even the top 3 things I learned from that session was, 1, all right, if you want to do something, spend the time reading and spend the time going deep in the area and expand your knowledge base on the area. That's 1. 2, all right, constantly follow up. Because I think one thing we may forget over time, I think within any organization or industry we are in, if people rely on you, you must make sure that you follow up on everything. Yeah. And I think the last one actually was, I think don't sell yourself short, because no matter where you are, there are always learning points you have gained, and also as an individual, you have things to offer. The question is, do you know what to offer, and do you know how to leverage on what you're doing? So I know I'm a good planner. I'm a good planner. I have a system. I can systematically manage a lot of different things at the same time. All right. I make sure I follow up on everything, and even if I need to follow up, I have a way of monitoring lah. So even how I organize my inbox, all right, there's a certain like structure to it. That's me lah, as an individual. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, to make sure I don't forget things, whether it be personal or professional. Yeah. So I mean, like actually, 1 is everything is Googleable. You can search for things. 2, always follow up. All right, because I think in a way it helps to generate trust. People can rely on you. People can depend on you. And then the last point actually is, I think, to sell yourself short, you need to know what your strengths are and then know how to leverage your strengths. So for example, I know it'll take me a lot of effort to try to code, all right? But I understand enough to know what the developers are saying or talking in terms of the architecture solutioning, all right? And at the same time also, I systematically know how to like do things from a process perspective, all right? I try to guide everyone along the same process. Guys, we need to do this first, all right? This is what we're going to do next, all right? I'll set up the meetings. Don't worry, I'll set up meetings. I'll send out the notes, all right? I'll make sure we capture the notes everywhere. Yeah, because I mean, one thing I realized is that people don't necessarily like to write notes, but I mean, from my experience in SAF, being a secretary for multiple meetings, you are forced to constantly think and try to write things down. So yeah, I'll take it upon myself. I say, guys, this is what we all said. All right, these are the follow actions. I'll follow up. Okay, I'll follow up. I'll track it. That kind of thing lah. So I mean, I play to my strengths that way lah. And likewise as well, I think everyone plays their own strengths lah. Yeah. The question is then, do you know what they are? All right, and do you know how to leverage on them and use them to your advantage? And then even if you know how to leverage and use them, do other people acknowledge the same, that these are your strengths and they depend on you for these strengths within a team at least? Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for that, Edmund. I think the point that I will be reflecting a bit more would be the huddle, the team huddle that you mentioned about punctuality and timing.
Yes.
I mean, on that note as well, we wanted to be faithful with our timing. I personally received quite a fair bit of so much life lessons and nuggets and nuggets of wisdom from Edmund. I was just wondering, Hazira, if it's okay with you, would you like to maybe just summarize maybe what Edmund said that was maybe poignant or memorable to you, and then we can together come to a close to the session and thank Edmund as well. Yeah.
Okay, I'm currently staring at my what's the thing called, flowchart notes, but like this is what I picked up on, right? There are several costs to disruption, but I think the biggest way in which Edmund has shared how to mitigate those costs is to be in a constant conversation with the people that are important to you. So he talked about his family, and then he also talked about the different people that he interacted with, like before he made that decision to switch. There was also the bit about how when choosing to the point at which the disruption became a question, it was because he was very, very comfortable with the SAF, which I think is very different from what most people would think of when they think like career switch or when they think of shifting industries. But the idea was that, because you're so comfortable that you know what's coming, that you want to see yourself grow in a different way. And I think like that's something that I found personally quite inspiring, and also I guess very valuable in terms of thinking of the idea of a perspective shift, because I think I think if you work in a specific industry for a very long time, you get used to a very particular kind of perspective, and then because of his work, he was also exposed to a different kind of perspective, and he was like, I think I want to explore that a bit further. And I think that's something that I personally find like very inspiring and very helpful. And also I guess to round that off in terms of how you would manage this transition or how you would manage this like disruption, it's very important to have hope and faith, to trust the time that it will take a while to get to where you want it to be, and also to have a whole life perspective on it, to constantly be reflecting on like what the decisions you've made at that point and how they have like impacted the things around you. I think this was what I gleaned most from this.
I guess Edmund would say that you can make a very good SCF secretary as well. Such a good summary. Great. But that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Edmund, for joining us, Hazira and I, for this session. We hope it was helpful for all of you as well, and stay tuned for more. Thanks, everyone. See you.
Thank you. Bye.